Hello, good morning everyone. Good morning to all the journalism educators who are with us today. Good morning po sa ating mga speakers na makakasama natin ngayong araw. Magandang buhay po. Good morning. We are glad to have you here and welcome to the second day of our webinar entitled Preparing for the New Normal in Journalism Education. This webinar is a project of Journalism Studies Association of the Philippines, JSAP. It is organized by University of the Philippines Diliman, Department of Journalism. It is co-organized by Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Department of Communication, and University of Santo Tomas Journalism Department. It is also organized under the Initiative for Media Freedom Program, which is implemented by Internews with the support of USAID. We would also like to thank our partners from Life and Barangay Hub. We invite you to join our digital community by following the Facebook page of Barangay Hub. This project is also supported by Department of Education Divisions of Manila. Thank you to all the participating schools, organizations, and agencies for supporting this initiative. By the way, I am Angelica Marie Simpao, the Project Coordinator of JSAP and Program Chair of BS Development Communication of Holy Cross College, Pampanga, and I will be your moderator for this webinar. So, kaya pa po ba? Welcome po sa ating second day, and I hope ready na po kayo and excited. So, I will not keep you waiting. Are you ready to meet our speakers and learn a lot from them? I hope you are. So let us take this opportunity to learn and improve our ways of teaching, especially during this crucial time. Some reminders lang po. We will be posting a thread again for the questions you want to ask our speakers today. So comment lang po kayo ulit doon para po mabasa namin ang inyong mga katanungan. Then we will upload po ang feedback forms later para po makapag-answer na din po kayo for the e-certificates din po natin. Okay, let us start this webinar rolling. I'm very excited for this because I'm very interested in investigative and data journalism. So our first speaker today is a senior reporter at Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, PCIJ, where she covers money and politics. Her stories have revealed irregularities in election, spending reports, and wealth declarations of public officials, conflict of interest in civil work contracts, and health hazard posed by a mining firm in Marinduque. She also conducted research on a budget and procurement transparency in the Philippines. So, an alumna of the Missouri School of Journalism, she teaches data journalism at the graduate level and investigative reporting at University of the Philippines Diliman and narrative journalism at undergraduate level at University of Santo Tomas. Friends, colleagues, let us hear it from Ma'am Karol Ilagan. Good morning, Ma'am Karol.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Angelica. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. I hope you are all well po and maraming salamat po for attending our webinar. I'm just going to share my screen po. Hold on lang po. Okay. Nakikita naman po nila yung screen?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. Sige po, again, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. For the next 30 minutes, I am going to talk about teaching investigative journalism online. Ito pong, hold on po. Oops. Ito pong aking session, dinesign ko po taking into account the current state of journalism practice in context, of course, po, of the pandemic. And I'm going to talk about some theories of online education para yun nga po, mag-guide tayo so far parang maybe ano po yung nakita na nagwo-work or maybe hindi po nagwo-work. We will also learn about some tips in designing the course with a focus on project and peer-based approaches. So yan po. Okay, siguro po kailangan po muna pag-usapan po natin yung current state po natin kasi mahirap pong mag-aral ng journalism without, yun nga, parang getting in touch with yung reality po natin. So, as we know, the pandemic has threatened truth-telling in the Philippines. So siguro po, we are all very aware of the various threats that we are facing right now. We have various threats to our press freedom. Cases in point po ang nangyari po sa ABS-CBN and ang conviction po ni Ms. Maria Ressa and Ray Santos of Rappler. But apart from that, we also have marami pong bagong batas na naipasa po, in particular the Bayanihan Act and also the Anti-Terrorism Act, na kumbaga yun nga po, no, ang tinitingnan po dito ng ating legal experts ay yung overbroadness ng batas, kung magiging liberal ang interpretasyon sa batas could practically make anyone a terrorist. So maaari po itong makapagdulot ng chilling effect among journalists. Apart from that po, may mga bago pero may mga lumang problema pa rin po tayong nakakaharap. In particular, access to information. Of course, quarantine has curbed our access to information kasi ang ating pong pamahalaan, hindi naman po lahat ay nakaset up online. So may dagdag rin pong difficulties po doon sa pagkuha ng records sa ating government agencies. And apart from that po, I cannot talk about our state of journalism without talking about journalism safety. And of course, maybe in recent years po, mas naging problema po natin ang quote-unquote fake news or disinformation. So yun, nilatag ko lang po para we are very well aware na ito po yung ating konteksto. And I also have to mention po, maybe similar po sa kinakaharap po ng ating public health system, ang ating naman pong education sector, medyo this is a test for us also, na kung paano po ipapagpatuloy effectively po ang learning, na online po ang setting, or yun nga, parang blended or hybrid, until the threat of COVID-19 is managed. So dito po tinitingnan, yun nga, readiness po ng ating schools, readiness po ng ating educators, at lalong-lalo na rin po ang readiness ng ating mga estudyante at ang kanilang mga magulang, yung kanila pong support system sa bahay. Kasi dito rin po kailangang pag-usapan natin yung konteksto sa Pilipinas naman na sige po, we do online, pero syempre may issues po tayo on access to internet, mobile connectivity, and also computer literacy. So, siguro po ito mas general po na konteksto. But in particular to teaching journalism, ang nakikita ko po talagang medyo, ito po ang challenge natin is, traditionally naman po, ang ating journalism courses, yun nga, they require field work to mirror the practical realities of reporting. Parang, sa lahat po, yun nga, nung na-experience po na kahit ako po, I took journalism classes, and when I teach journalism classes, meron pong pag-focus po talaga sa fieldwork, meaning you have to go out. Kaya lang nga po, babalikan po natin yung konteksto natin ngayon, medyo may mga difficulties. Kaya lang po, I don't want to sound very negative po, kasi yun nga, we know na medyo mahirap na po yung ating situation right now, but I see a lot of opportunities din po, and I share that with a sense of confidence because I work at a news outlet. I work at a non-profit sa PCIJ po, and somehow we are able to make it work. Pero yun nga po, it's parang work in progress rin po, parang it's a learning process. So, kaya ito pong mga susunod pong parts, magpo-focus po ako on, yun nga po, some theories, plus also giving some tips on ano po siguro yung pwedeng tutukan na content, and also maybe some tips po on delivery. Itong experience naman pong ito ay maybe mula po sa akin, yun nga, from before, having some experience teaching online classes po kasi ito po yung mode rin po sa DLSU, and then more recently rin po sa UST, well of course during the pandemic, naging online po yung classes. So, some lessons po, pero yun nga, I'd be happy to hear from everyone also po kung ano po yung nakikita rin po ninyo na mga good practices. Sige po. Ayan, may konting word, ano lang po ako dito, word cloud. Ayun, kasi po, no, parang kailangan pag-usapan din po yung mga iba't ibang theories. Of course, I would not go through each one of them po, pero yun po, parang maganda pong tingnan natin yung mga, ano po ba yung mga theories for online learning environment. Kaya dito po, ito po yung familiar na maririnig natin, community of inquiry, online collaborative learning, and then the other terms po, ayan siguro for many of us na nag-undergo po ng training, yung mga asynchronous, blended, hybrid, yan po. Pero for investigative journalism po, what I really found helpful po, this is roughly yun nga po, a theory of investigative practice from James Hollings. He is a journalist from New Zealand. Mag-focus lang po ako dito kasi ultimately, kung investigative journalism po, ito po yung parang kumbaga nais nating ma-experience ng ating estudyante in a span of 4 months. I know, marami pong difficulties po dyan kasi ang paggawa po ng investigative report, hindi po siya, yun nga, it's demanding, it takes more time and resources. Yun po. The success of an investigation depends on the determination of the journalist to prove a truth that goes beyond allegation and denial and their ability to find evidence to do that. Now, keyword po yung evidence. The ability to find the evidence depends on, first, kung nag-e-exist yung evidence, and pangalawa, kung yung reporter, he or she knows, and he's able to apply the appropriate methods to acquire it. Medyo yun nga, this is the theory, but I think for a lot of us, it really starts with asking a question and finding ways on how to answer that question. Parang yun nga, kung pasisimplihin ko po. Now, paano po siya itatranslate in, the learning and the teaching process? I find these several models or theories helpful po. In particular po to investigative journalism. Mayroon po tayong theory based on the constructivist approach where learning can best be done through social discourse, meaning students learn from experienced mentors. So that could be from the teacher or by inviting guest speakers who can also talk more about their practical experience in doing investigative journalism. Pangalawa po, students also often learn best when learning peer-based and project-based. Ito naman po kaya for a lot of journalism courses po na aking nasubukan, nakikita ko po na effective yung merong proyekto na ginagawa ang estudyante in the long term na makikita niya kung paano matatapos ito by the end of the term. Now, I know po, syempre, as mentioned earlier, 4 months might not be enough, but I think you would be surprised po kasi sa experience ko, I've seen a lot of students na naging successful po sila. If not as in kumpletong-kumpleto yung story, they know exactly kung ano yung kulang pa sa kanilang story. So yun po, project-based and of course also peer-based where they are able to work with their classmates. And finally, motivational theory suggests the students are motivated by success and the knowledge that they are pursuing a realistic and authentic goal that they actually care about. So dito po importante rin po na we give our students a sense of control that they are able to pick a topic that they want to pursue for their project. Ayun po. So ito po parang generally ito po yung sinusunod ko when I design a journalism class and in particular investigative. Pero ngayon po na online na ito po yung nakikita ko po na maybe maari pa pong subukan, maganda pong i-test natin yung tinatawag na community of inquiry. I can share some literature po on this, but to describe it briefly, it supports the design of online and blended courses as active learning environments or communities. At dependent po siya sa instructors and students sharing ideas, information, and opinions. Now, you might think, di po ba, that's what we do rin naman offline. But dito po, we can take advantage of technology kasi there are marami pong applications that could aid the process of students and instructors sharing ideas and information. So dito po yun nga, parang in some courses, pwede po tayong gawa ng blogs sa ating students. So, every week they're able to reflect on the topic that's being discussed and also share maybe ano yung challenges that they're facing with their project. Ayan po. So, I'll move on to the content and delivery po na part. Sige po. Ayan. So, isa-summarize ko lang po for an investigative journalism course, dito po talaga ako nagpo-focus sa 5 step na ito. Siguro po you might have come across yung merong hypothesis method po. Pero yun nga po, I try to make it as simple as possible because IJ is parang very intimidating. So, syempre po, for students, so we don't want to set them up for failure also. So, maganda po, yun nga, yung konsepto po ay we make it as simple as possible. Na yun nga po, we find the lead or this is yung topic na maybe they're interested in. So, usually, ang nangyayari po dito, we do a workshop. So, in the physical setting, may whiteboard po yan or blackboard where we write ano yung mga interest po ng mga estudyante. But of course, i-move po natin ito online. Become an quote-unquote expert. So, dito naman po, basically, this focuses more on backgrounding. So, of course, before a student is able to take on an investigation, dapat alam po niya yung background. And dito po, malaking tulong rin po ang online resources because basically for backgrounding, ito po yung tinatawag na we do the sniffing, So, we read a lot of reports, studies about the particular topic that we're working on. And number 3, dito na po papasok yung reporting part na gathering evidence where we do our own research, independent research, where we get records, get data, and do interviews. Now, I would understand there might be, yun nga po, may another level po of difficulties ngayon now because, yun nga, we are all at home. But at the very least po, siguro dito ang maganda pong i-impart po sa ating students is yun nga, knowing where to find the information or the document or the data, plus also getting them in touch with the right people. So, dito po, parang nakikita ko, well, at least po, from our experience sa PCIJ, syempre po for yung journalist na nagtatrabaho na, meron silang tinatawag na parang repertoire of moves kasi parang because they've done it in previous stories, may contacts na sila. So, dito po baka kailangan ng konting assist for our students kasi of course nga parang they're all starting from scratch, kumbaga. Test the evidence. So dito po, when we analyze different information that we've gathered from our sources. And finally, yung telling the story, ito po yung pagsulat sa story. And dito rin po, I also encourage students to explore also different ways of storytelling. Siyempre po, walang tatalo doon sa we are able to write a story na text or print. But because yun nga po, online po ang ating setting and ang balita rin po na kukuha natin social media, it's also important to think about paano po magta-translate ang ating story social media. Time check lang po. I think I just have about 10 minutes. Sige po. So doon po sa process, parang roughly yung aking pong syllabus nagsisimula po with lecture, of course, history, role, and process of investigative journalism. And I pay a lot of attention for deconstructing stories. So sure, parang we can get good examples ng mga na-publish na po ng ibang news organizations. Pero dito po, I get permission from my former students so I can share their work with my current students. Kasi dito po mas maiintindihan po ng estudyante na, ay, nakaya niya. So, I think kakayanin ko din. So, nakakadagdag po yun ng confidence sa ating estudyante. So yun, deconstructing stories done by other students. Story proposal or the story memo. This is very important po, kasi for the instructor na magsaserve po as mentor, kailangan po parang yun nga, nakaset po yung plano and mag-guide yung ating estudyante from the very beginning. But of course, syempre po, we need to be flexible also kasi in the process of reporting, there could be mga unseen na hindi po nakikita when you were doing your proposal for the project. Becoming expert, so ito po yung yun nga, parang, again, as I mentioned earlier, dito po papasok yung pagkuha ng evidence in the form of getting information, getting data, and seeking interviews from multiple sources and applying the discipline of verification. And finally po, also telling the story, dito po papasok yung pag-organize ng lahat ng information na nakuha ng estudyante. Okay, for content po, I think it's also important po na we expose students maybe doon po sa mga new, emerging technologies po na ginagamit na ngayon po journalism. Maybe not so much in the Philippines po, but it's good to understand ano po yung development na ngayon ng paggamit ng data and technology in telling the truth. So, of course, and po, data, we do data, pero recently po, ang mas nagiging popular rin po right now is open source investigations, and there are several groups like Bellingcat and other news organizations po that they've done a lot of good investigations using open source information or open source technology and applications. So ito po yung you do research, Google reverse image search, you do research on social media also. So of course, syempre, marami rin pong considerations because hindi rin naman po natin paniniwalaan everything that we see online. Pero dito po maganda, marami po tayong resources na makikita po rito. And it's also good to think about new technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, sensors, drone. Don't get me wrong po, this doesn't mean na papalitan yung trabaho natin ng machine or ng AI, but it's really more of aiding our work. Like for example po, machine learning, marami pong, may mga ilang pong reports na nagawa dito na naging successful in terms of yun nga, parang instead of parang mano-mano natin gagawin. There is technology na makakapag-aid po sa atin when we want to analyze content or text. Of course, as mentioned, new ways of storytelling. Dito po, there is, it might be good to think about how we can collaborate with other people like artists, musicians also for us to better tell our stories. And finally, digital journalism ethics. Hindi po ibig sabihin nito ay totally bago, but siguro po makikita po ninyo yung guiding principles natin, kailangang i-adapt dun sa online environment po natin kasi we are faced with challenges now because of social media. So yun po. For the delivery, small group discussions, ito po talaga, medyo, would really be more work for our educators. Kasi po, lalo na kung malaki yung class size, mahirap po talaga na i-manage po yung pagtuturo. Pero lalo na ngayon na online. So, I would advise po na yun nga, medyo bitakin pa po natin yung ating klase para mas matutukan po natin yung estudyante. But again, yun nga po, kailangan po may konting time management po dito because we might be working from home, pero siguro po nare-realize ninyo, it's becoming more laborious din po, maraming trabaho na na-entail po. Mix of individual and group assignments. Ayan, para ma-encourage din po for the students to work independently. Assignments that allow students to speak to journalists. And again, as mentioned earlier, guest speakers. And movies and podcasts. For a lot of, syempre po, no, the Gen Z, millennial, marami po tayong resources na makukuha. Of course, yun nga, dapat kinocurate din po natin. But I think they also learn a lot from, yun nga po, when mas visual rin po. Or yan, pwede natin i-explore yung audio when delivering our lessons. Some online resources po, ito naman po, no, parang not just for journalism students, but journalists in general. These organizations, these websites have a lot of guides on their websites. So, in particular po itong GIJN, may mga resources po sila and also they conduct webinars. Yung Bellingcat, na-mention ko po kanina for open source investigation. And ito pong Investigative Journalism Education Consortium. This is very helpful kasi they also share syllabus, course materials. So pwede po nating tingnan, pwede po nating gawing inspiration or i-adapt sa Philippine context naman po. So yan, ito po yung sample nung website po nito. Ito po yung sa Bellingcat, for instance. How do you investigate fake news and disinformation? Guide to using reverse image search. This is the website po of IJEC and the GIJN help desk. So this is helpful po yung sa GIJN kasi may mga certain tracks sila. So if you want to dive deep into data journalism or data, may section po sila specific for that. So, I think I'm almost done po with my time. Siguro lang po, no, maybe if may ma-share lang po ako yun nga, parang baka kailangan po i-highlight further for online learning yung active and project and peer-based. But of course, I understand, no, kailangan din po siyang i-adapt doon sa challenges that we are facing online. So, ito na lamang po. Maraming salamat po. Kung may questions po, I'd be happy to answer them po. Or kung later po, if you want to get in touch, here is my email. And I'm also sharing the references I used for this presentation. And all of the images that you saw are by photojournalist Bernard Testa. So, maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Karol, for that very informative and comprehensive presentation. So we also have questions coming from our participants who are watching via Facebook live stream po sa ating close group. By the way, we reached more than 500 viewers as of now. So let me read some of the questions po, Ma'am Karol. No? From Adam Ren Sulyaga. Hello, Ma'am Karol Ilagan. Is there a format in writing the evidence for investigative journalism? If yes, what is it?
Okay. Okay. Interesting po yung magandang tanong po yan, ano? Kasi yun nga, parang format or parang ang tanong po ay formula. Dito naman po, it depends on the story. Kasi it depends on the story. And it also depends on the kind of information and the interviews that you got. But of course, syempre po, no, parang kung titingnan po natin yung format, parang, well, simply, no, parang, of course, you have your introduction, parang nandun yung iyong lead. It depends on ano yung, kasi pwede po siyang parang narrative format also, or it could be parang talagang, sa unang paragraph pa lang, alam mo na yung finding ng story. So again, it depends on the kind of story that you were doing. Pero kung babalikan ko po, no, yung format, maganda pong tingnan, babalikan po natin yung information na nakuha ninyo. And kailangan mong i-gauge alin yung pinaka-importante na nakuha mong information at yun yung itataas mo sa iyong report. So yun po, parang siguro mas mas ang tanong po niya papasok doon sa organizing the information that you got. And of course, syempre po, kung ano po yung pinaka-relevant, parang yun yung dapat na unahin natin. At least relevant po doon sa investigation.
Okay po, thank you.
I hope that helped po, sir.
Okay. If may follow-up question si Sir Adam Renzuliaga, pwede pong i-comment niyo ulit dun sa post po natin sa live stream natin. So, another question from Ma'am Susalyn Ramos. Excuse me. What protection do journalists have today if they are covering sensitive issues involving influential personalities?
Hello?
Hello po, ma'am.
Did I get that correct po? Ano po ang ating protection?
What protection do journalists have today if they are covering sensitive issues involving influential personalities? Yes po.
Okay. Medyo, ano pa, no? Parang ang hirap sagutin po nung tanong kasi I think, of course, hindi ko po alam yung buong konteksto ng tanong, pero ang naiisip ko po kasi yung konteksto natin ngayon with the Anti-Terrorism Act. So, yun nga, parang we need to be very careful on, yun nga, parang marami po tayong concerns po ngayon in terms of reporting. Pero siguro po dito papasok, parang kailangan po ang main protection po natin, I think, is that we are able to do our report na tama po. Meaning, we try to walang butas yung ating report. That is the best parang protection that we can do na hindi po based sa, isang information lang or isang source lang yung ating story. Parang that is the best protection that we can have. So, kung paano po ito itatranslate sa mismong proseso, so ibig sabihin po dito parang dapat maayos po rin yung relationship natin with our editor. May kausap po tayo when we do our stories. There are different eyes na tumitingin po sa ating storya. We do fact-checking. We proofread our story. And yung fact-check, hindi lang po, of course, minor details matter. Pero hindi lang minor details, but the bigger findings of your story. And finally, of course, libel check. Especially yun nga po kung medyo sensitive yung information or it's a political person. Of course, syempre importante that we get the subject's side also to our story. Yun po, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay po. Next question from JD Monk. What should students be wary about getting data like numbers, in particular via online? So let me repeat. Okay na po.
Ayan. Thank you for that question. This is a good question po, kasi there might be, parang misconception na, everything is online, so it's easy to get data online. On one hand, that is true po. Hindi ko po yun parang i-deny na even though may problem po tayo to access to information, hindi naman po yan lahat. Parang there are agencies where we can get good information or good data. Pero po dito, parang ang palagi ko pong nire-remind po for students is that we bring down, how do I say this? Kasi sometimes po, when we look at data, we treat it as if parang, yan na yun. Parang, because I have this data, I can answer all of the questions in my story. Maganda po i-treat natin yung data as one of many sources of information. Meaning, ako nga po, ang palagi kong pinapractice is I treat it as if it's a person also. So yung data, tatanungin ko rin siya ng mga tanong. Parang, paano ka ba ginawa? Sino ang nagbuo sa data na ito? Meron ka bang limitations? Meron kang hindi alam? So siguro po in that way, mas magiging informed tayo when we use that particular data in our story. So again, yun nga po, balik po doon sa punto na parang hindi siya, we treat it na we have all of the answers. Pero yun, again, we treat it as just one of many other sources that we can also check.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, ma'am. Meron po tayong question dito sa ating Zoom. From Ma'am Angelina Borican, is it advisable to do class requirement for investigative journalism by group? And how many members is ideal po?
Okay. Dito po, i-share ko po yung aking sariling experience. Before po, I would, it's, for me po, it's advisable to assign assignments by group. Kasi, yun nga, parang it's also important for students to learn from each other. And yun nga, parang we have 4 months. So kung mas marami pong tutulong doon sa proyekto, mas malaki po yung chance na matapos yung project. Kaya lang I also understand po, merong pros and cons because you have group members na, baka hindi po magtrabaho, and that's very common. What I do po, and yun nga, parang when I do the workshop, yung pong, kasi ang ginagawa ko po pagka magpo-propose ng story, wino-workshop po yan na isusulat sa board kung ano yung mga topics na interested sila, na gusto nilang gawin. Now, ang nangyayari po, makikita ng estudyante na meron silang magkakatulad, yung may common topics. So, ang pinapag-grupo po ay yung may common interests. But I also, hindi ko rin po, I also welcome na may estudyante na they want to do the project individually. So yun nga lang, parang medyo mas flexible po ako dito. Hindi po siya strict na 5 groups of 4 members or 5 members. But ang mas advisable po yun nga, smaller group, mga 3, yun po, mga 3 to 4, 4 is max na po siguro. Plus make sure po na, yun nga, right from the very start, they have the same interests. So, hindi po ito yung, I don't normally do yung pong magka-count off. Kasi yun nga, baka po magka-grupo yung estudyante na hindi naman po sila interested dun sa same topic. So, yun po, interest is very, very key. Especially yun po for an IJ project.
Okay po. Ma'am, nabanggit na po ba ninyo kanina? May question po kasi si Sir Robert Mariel Villaruna. Gaano po usually katagal dapat ginagawa ang isang investigative journalism? For example, one assignment since time-based po lahat ng news and events?
Okay po. For an IJ project po so outside of the classroom, yung IJ po talaga, it depends on the kind of story that you're working on. It could take months, but don't be surprised din po. There are investigations that could take a few days. But yun nga po, depende po ito sa topic. Pero po for a classroom setting, mayroon po tayong 4 months Ang aking pong suggestion, maybe po the first few weeks, mga 5-6 weeks, i-devote po natin for lectures. So yun, mga history, process of IJ. And then yung mga susunod na pong buwan or weeks, mas nakafocus na po on the students working on their reports. So I know parang hindi po ito parang formula na you give them 3-4 months and that they would able to continue or complete a report. So kaya dito naman po kailangan din na closely na monitor ng mentor or ng teacher yung progress ng estudyante. Kaya po, kanina po nabanggit ko yung story proposal, story memo. Parang research din po kasi doon natin matatrack ano yung progress ng ating estudyante. So, siguro po kung yun nga, going back to the question, gaano katagal, again, depende po sa story. Pero kung classroom context po, I think yung 3 to 4 months could give the student or the group enough time for them to really be able to explore their topic.
Okay po. We'll accommodate last 2 questions na lang po, no, ma'am? May nagtatanong po kasi sa mga sources, like Ma'am Ailini Latade, do you have some tips on picking out resources, evidence po? Like, how would you? Then, from Sir Leo Laparan naman po, your fellow UST Journalism faculty daw po, an important principle, or should I say core discipline, investigative journalism, is multi-sourcing, especially in verifying information. Ano ang magandang paraan na kapag multi-source ang mga estudyante, especially that Understandably, most data could be gathered for the course may come from the internet. Ayun, nabanggit po kanina. And our reality right now is we cannot really conduct field work physically. What methods or procedures do you recommend?
Okay. Parang ano po, no, related po yung ating dalawang tanong kasi sourcing. So, hello po, Miss Eileen and Sir Leo. Good to see you po. Okay. Doon po sa unang tanong na kung paano po pipili ng sources. Of course po, no, parang may mga criteria po tayo dyan. So, yung familiarity po sa topic, pero syempre po may practical considerations din na kung sino rin po ba yung talagang kaya nating makausap. Pero at the very least po, ang dapat tutukan po natin, ang i-prioritize ay yung may knowledge po talaga about the topic. Pero yun nga, no, nabanggit po kanina ni Leo, hindi po isa lang yung dapat nating kausapin or dalawa. Siyempre, it depends on the kind of story that you are working on. So, dito po, yun nga, parang walang tatalo po dun sa multiple sources kasi doon nyo po mas makikita, yun nga, yung marang, ang term nila, the best obtainable version of the truth. So, yun po. Pero syempre, yun nga, priority kung sino yung may maalam po dun sa topic. So, kung, for example, you know, pwedeng current or former government official or pwede po from the academe na expert na tinitingnan po itong topic na ito. Ayun po. Plus, of course po, syempre, usually pag investigative reporting, we talk about government policies. Huwag po natin kakalimutan kung sino po talaga yung naaapektuhan ng policy. So we're talking of people in general po, no? Na hindi po, dahil hindi sila eksperto or nasa academe po sila, they don't know about what's happening. If not, baka sila po yung pinakamaalam pa doon sa nangyayari po. Doon po sa tanong ni Leo, ni Sir Leo, thank you for that question. Medyo difficult nga po ito kasi yun nga, parang may triangle po yan, di ba? Parang yung multiple sources, you get documents, data. So, ayan, there are difficulties, but we're able to get some of those documents and data. We talk about sources, people, na multiple din po na pwede nating pag-usapan. Pero ito po yung problem nga natin. Kasi yung pangatlo doon sa ating triangle is field work or bearing witness or seeing it for yourself. Now, dito po, medyo mahirap po itong sagutin kasi yun nga, considering na tayo po ay in quarantine. Pero siguro po ang aking advice po is yun nga, we have to be more creative or strategic or kailangan po pong i-widen natin yung ating network of sources for us to really find out ano po ba yung nangyayari sa field. So, ayun po, parang if hindi po talaga makakalabas yung reporter, yun po kasi parang yun nga, ideally, we're able to go out. But if not, yun nga po, parang wider network of sources who can help us see what's happening on ground. Kaya dito po, ang siguro po ang magandang solution po dito is that we collaborate. So I'm not saying po other sources na interviewees, but we collaborate with other journalists, news outlets, para mas ma-report po natin yung story. So kasi nangyayari naman po ito, like for example, you can't go to a particular, let's say, a community or a province, pero getting in touch with someone na mas maalam po doon sa lugar na yon could maybe help us better understand ano po ang nangyayari or sitwasyon sa lugar po na iyon. So yun, ang sagot ko po, Sir Leo, ay collaboration po. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Karol. Thank you for sharing your time and knowledge with us during this JSAP webinar. Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Karol, at nakasama po namin kayo ngayong araw na to.
Maraming salamat din po, and I'm looking forward to the speakers po na susunod. Makikinig rin po ako. Salamat!
Salamat po!